Great to have you here today. I think the issues we've been talking about today really do merit the serious discussion that we've been having here. But I'd like to begin by reiterating the point that we as a nation have a solemn responsibility to bring home every serviceman or woman who volunteers to put on the uniform and places themselves in harm's way on behalf of the values our nation holds dear and on behalf of each and every one of us. It's the abiding promise we make. And it was the underlying motivator in the actions that our President has taken with your guidance and advice and consent. Just briefly like to address the issue of notice that's received so much discussion. It's clear that as we look at the actions that took place in 2011, 2012, in the context of a possible reconciliation process, there was indeed generalized notice. I think that members of Congress knew that there might be 5 Taliban who would be exchanged for Sergeant Bergdahl in an effort to bring him home. So on that front, I don't think there's deep surprise that this is actually would possibly take place. But a lot of the concern has been on the issue of specific notice, and I think it troubles all of us given the 2014 NDAA. On the other hand, I do think the exigent circumstances that you've described, the quick turn of events that necessitated quick action, made the 30 days notice a tough one. But I do think a little heads up, maybe a couple hours call to the leaders of Congress might have served you all very well. And that being said, I also note that what you have said that was not a simple transfer, but a military action and conducted very well by our military who was put in harm's way. And I commend those soldiers for pulling this off as they did without incident. But I'd actually like to address another aspect of Section 1035 of the NDAA, and that is the need to put in place mitigating circumstances, that you have a level of comfort that these released detainees will be held as promised and not quickly put back in the battle place. Can you talk about that a bit? I know some of it you will revisit or visit in a classified setting, but I'd like to hear as much as you can talk about in this context.
Congresswoman, thank you. As you note, I mentioned about 4 general areas that are included in the specifics of the Memorandum of Understanding on the enforcement commitments made by the government of Qatar, personally made in a telephone conversation with President Obama. I can't get into the specifics until we get into this closed session on the real most significant parts of that MOU assurance, which we all assessed. Every agency in the government who signed off on this decision all agreed that those were strong enforcement mechanisms that would give us some significant reassurance that those 5 individuals would be kept in Qatar, and all the other assurances as to their activity. And again, we can go into the specifics of that.
The track record hasn't been great. So what do you have, up your sleeve that you feel comfortable will allow you to carefully monitor the situation?
Recognizing what you just said, the dimensions now that we are looking at, too, that have changed a bit in Qatar. You have a new leader in Qatar, a new emir, over the last year. We have a significant United States force presence in Qatar. Many of you have visited our base there. We have thousands of people there. We have some significant relationship with the government of Qatar. They've had difficulties with their neighbors. I think the geopolitical arrangements that they would like to see change, I can't speak for them, but you asked me some of my thoughts, I think put a different face on this as well. And there are some other assurances that I don't want to address here in an open session. But suffice it to say, they were all strong enough to get the commitments that we each individually, each leader of each agency, came to the same conclusion as ultimately did the President, that it in fact was in the interest of our country and in fact did substantially mitigate the risk.
Thank you. This is a legitimate and real concern of, I know, of my constituents.
Well, it's a concern of ours.
And the memo of understanding will be made available again. It got to us last evening, and that'll be made available to all members of the committee in the proper setting. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.